Ash Zukerman, first of all, congratulations. Manhattan's going to a second season. We're going to see some more Charlie. All right.
Yeah, it's very, very, very cool. I'm in Santa Fe now. I'm about halfway through the season.
Oh, excellent. And what's the typical day like on the set? What time do you have to be there? And take us through that.
Look, I think it's an ensemble, generally a pretty ensemble show. So the days are pretty scattered, but usually it's 6:15 a.m. starts, and then finish around 8:30 p.m. And then we get some days off and some afternoons off here and there.
Okay. Charlie Isaacs is to be very candid here, a rather confusing character because he begins as this kind of innocent potential hero. He comes on to you kind of see this show through his eyes, and then he becomes this champion of a certain kind of science, and then he's accused of being a spy, and he goes through all of these. It must be great for you in terms of the kind of richness of the character, but there are many times the viewer doesn't know if this is a good guy or a bad guy or what is going on. So I mean, explain Charlie to us.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. I think that's exactly how I experienced him as well, because we didn't have all the scripts, and the Sam and Tommy intentionally wanted to withhold some information from us to make sure that these secrets would be really well explored and well handled, and we'd see how we responded to the characters as they were listed, not as they ultimately behaved. So at the end of the season, I think the Charlie that we see, where we really don't know if he's about to save the world or end the world, I think that's probably the true Charlie, and that's who we actually get to meet once. I think his naivety is stripped away, and also his kind of these moral shrouds that he wears. I think that sort of gets stripped away as well, and we actually end up with the essential Charlie. In the first script, the first ever introduction of Charlie, so he and Abby and Joey are riding through the desert looking for Los Alamos, and they're lost. And the character description is Charlie Isaacs, 26 years old, untested wunderkind, a map over his knees, lost but won't admit it. And at first, I just thought, untested wunderkind, okay, he's never had a shot. He's never had a shot to prove his intelligence, the intelligence he knows he has. But as the series goes on, and actually we realize that, no, this is actually a man that never fit in at school. His father thought he was worthless. He never fit in at Harvard. He could never find that one thing that would make him famous, the fame that he knew he deserved, so he stole that information. So he comes to Los Alamos on borrowed coattails, truly untested both by anybody and by him, that his genius is not known to anybody, and he doubts it personally. And at the same time, when he's lost, he won't admit it. And that's who we've ended up trusting the bomb with. And I think it's someone desperate to actually prove who they are, both to themselves and to everyone else.
And in that final scene, in that final episode you mentioned, he does show us a kind of moral side. His marriage is deeply flawed, shall we say, but yet he's making these huge sacrifices on behalf of his wife it's very touching, isn't it? I mean, he cares.
Right. I think at any point in our storytelling, it would be the wrong move to ever not fundamentally be a father and a husband. And I think that's also at the center of Charlie. That, however else he's flawed, I think he truly loves his wife, the one person who probably ever saw something real in him, the person who ever actually believed in him, and his son, which, that's something you can never get over. So I think they are his touchstones. That whenever everything else gets crazy and the train keeps moving and he can't seem to get off and he can't seem to make sense of Akeley or Frank, I think that's something that he can always be reminded of. And when he looks into Abby's face, that's something that's very real and that's very honest, and that can ground him. And then in the second season, we're lucky that we actually get to explore the extent that that's actually possible.
You've said publicly in past interviews that Charlie is broken now. That's something broke inside of him this first year. How how deep,
Right.
how deeply broken is he as we now move forward into season 2? What has fundamentally changed about his character, by this experience?
I think in season 2 we don't see as big a conflicted Charlie. He's less cerebral. I think whatever's happened to him, and the writing is, I feel, so subtle and not as simple as an event happens and then an individual changes. This is something that happened over the 6 months of season 1, that he's now bent and dogmatically pursuing building this thing, that whatever doubts he had, somehow through this ordeal, he's actually been able to bury them deeply inside him. And he actually believes that this is what needs to happen. And it will absolutely be for the audience to decide whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, whether he's doing it for himself or he's doing it for the world. And that's what I love about our show, is that it's never one thing or the other thing, that it's actually something that people will be able to receive that however they want to. But I think that's fundamentally the difference, that Charlie's asking less questions, less of the bigger questions, and he's actually now just wanting to get this thing done. And and that allows, optimistically, that also allows Charlie to become the leader that he maybe doubted himself to be. And we actually get to explore him pushing all of his personal boundaries to actually get this thing done. And then the problem is that I think ultimately there's probably, as Danny Stern says it, that Charlie Isaacs is probably one gene short of being the perfect guy to do this thing. And I think that's the conflict within Charlie in the second season.
The big question that I have is why hasn't this topic been tackled to this extent before? In other words, right now, the biggest drama hanging over the heads of mankind is the threat of nuclear destruction. Hollywood claims to be in search all the time of great dramas for TV and film, but this just went untapped, essentially, didn't it? I mean, we've seen movies and things that touch on this subject and slightly explore it, but finally, there is an attempt here to, and a serious effort to explore this in a huge way, so that, in a way, it's not just and I love it that it's 2 shows. In effect, it's one of the shows is about creating the atom bomb, but the other one is, as all of you involved with the show like to say, and it's true, it's really a show about secrets and what they do to you as people.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that I think that the nuclear bomb seems to be just such a fundamental and clear idea of destruction of humanity. But I think we'd be lying to ourselves if we thought that, I mean, between the countries of the world now, we could destroy the world many times over with all the ammunition that we have and never use a nuclear weapon. I mean, we're well equipped to destroy the human race as we have it now, and we've been able to for a very, very long time. And so I think, but I think what it is, it's a very clear idea of destruction, which allows us to explore the ideas about what we allow our government to do in the name of righteousness and the good and the common good. And we actually continually get to question what that means to our society if we actually let ignorance and our personal naivety actually act on a global scale. I think that's the show. And I think in that level, that's an idea that we actually are asking quite a lot these days. I think there's a lot of shows that actually continually asking the question of how much evil needs to happen to do good. And that's a very beautiful thing. That to me is what art's about, and it's about responding to what's happening in our society and asking questions back. And I think that's the zeitgeist now. We're actually questioning our government, we're questioning our processes, and we're questioning it in very honest and interesting ways. And I think that's what our show does. And what Sam did was he found the beginnings of that, or he seemed to essentialize all these ideas down into 1945 and to a community that was built for the purpose of this thing. And I think, yeah, that's the show.
And people are surprised when they dig into the show about this community that, as you just said, that Charlie has trouble finding it. We learned during the course of this season that it's a show that it's a place that doesn't really have an address. It has one P.O. box. We learned that it's a closed, secret world where residents have to take lie detector tests, and they have to fight for cooking equipment, and that it's overcrowded. A lot of people are getting pregnant because there's not much else to do, apparently. And your character at one point gets a nosebleed because there's some kind of radiation poisoning going on. That this world actually existed, and that it's this confined space that is just fraught with drama and conflict.
It's mind-blowing, and I think, interestingly, I think it's actually perhaps sometimes hard to believe that our show is realistic, because you actually somehow we have a what do you call that when they used to put something on the lens of to haze
the lens or something. Yes, sure.
Right, to kind of make so we look back on the 40s and the 50s and the earlier times of the beginnings of our modern civilization, and we like to think of those times as somehow more righteous or better equipped to handle the world, but I think that there's so little known publicly about the events that happened in Los Alamos that it's very difficult to actually believe that our story comes far too close to the truth than anyone would actually like. I think there were murders there. There were people who died. There were accidents. There were where they were playing with a science that they knew nothing about. So radiation was leaking throughout the buildings. They knew that concrete would withstand some of the radiation. However, they built this town so fast that it was all just thin timber, and that's it. And I think that's what I like to think is that that's all. While this is a period piece and we are exploring that time and what that time did, it's constantly buttressed by that idea about what our government is doing for the sake of something else. That we never get to the point of docudrama, that we never get to the point of iconography, that we actually, everything that we show on the show, how it happened, but we use it to explain something else, and a melting pot. And it's really like a microcosm of our whole society, of especially America, I'd say. And I think that's what's exciting.
What did you find to be the biggest surprise? My biggest surprise was that they impose secrecy on married couples. That, for example, you're not allowed to tell Abby what's going on here, and that they actually believe they could enforce that in this small community that has limited communication. So that in a way, there's already a level of protection of the secrets. They can't phone out the right letters without getting past certain eyes.
Right.
What did you find surprising about the real aspect of this show that you're living?
It's interesting. We've been living with all of these things that surprised us so heavily a year and a half ago that now it all seems ordinary,
right.
Which is probably the problem. But I remember that when I realized that 500,000 people actually were working in some way on this weapon. It's 500,000 people, when the population of America at that time was, far less than what we have now. That's a huge proportion of people who actually had a physical hand in actually making this bomb possible and knew nothing about it. That there were only 2,000 people that actually knew what it was all working towards, but that 500,000 people in some way were building buildings that scientists would live in, or especially the uranium enrichment and refinement. I think, and then to have kept it a secret from the people, and to still to this day keep it a secret generally, I think that is an astounding both crime and achievement. Mind you, I'm sure that people at high levels of the military listen to Gold Derby, and I hope that they will, and they'll be laughing right now, because I'm sure that continues to this day. I'm sure that there's some thing that's involving just as many people right now that is being used in ways that that our society doesn't necessarily accept or understand or know about or have any ability to question. And I'm sure, so we're still doing that. I'm sure our government is still doing that in some way.
Do you have some favorite scenes from the first season? Things you think, well, that worked out really well. Maybe not even your scenes. You know, maybe just scenes from the show. You know.
No, I guess I have a difficult time ever choosing one scene over another. I find they're all.
All right, let me switch the question to this then. Yeah. Nothing ever goes according to script in Hollywood. So there's always something that goes wrong on the set. It's a rainy day. You can't move the trucks because the roads are muddy, or something goes wrong. And they're always interesting to hear for fans of a show to then, you know, what was going on behind the scenes that might make an interesting story.
Sure, that makes me think of an interesting scene. So we're shooting that. There's a showdown between Akeley and Charlie at the end of episode 12, I think it is. And it's 4 or 5 pages of dialogue. It's Charlie confronts Akeley about the fact that Thin Man was never going to work, and Akeley knew about it. Charlie comes clean, and it's actually done. And then somehow Akeley masterfully is able to turn it around and actually end up blaming Frank for this. And really, to a scene where we really get to see how deep Charlie's confusion is at this point and what this place has done to him. This guy that believes himself to be so intelligent now has zero capacity to actually think for himself. Anyway, so it's a huge, complicated scene. We rehearse it, we block it out. Dan Attias is directing, a genius that he is. And then lightning storms come in, and I believe this is the case all over America, but definitely New Mexico. If lightning strikes within 5 miles of production, we have to down tools for half an hour because lightning is obviously it's unpredictable, and if it hits a generator, all sorts of problems and accidents could happen. So it's a great safety thing that we have. So if there's lightning within 5 miles, and every time a lightning strikes within that 5 miles, the clock starts again at half an hour. So we have, and it's TV time. We shoot these episodes in 7 days, which is mind-blowing to us. Maybe that seems to an audience, that seems, yeah, sure. It's an hour of television. I'm sure you can knock that out in 7 days. But it's incredibly difficult and challenging. So the 4 hours we have to shoot a scene like that very quickly got reduced to, I think, something like 45 minutes. And at the same time, we're losing light. It's about to become nighttime, which you can see in that scene. So Richard Rakowski, our DP, at the last minute, they all made this decision to shoot it handheld. We did, I think, 2 rolling takes. So we didn't call cut. We just did 2 takes of the scene where one camera was on David, one camera was on me. And we just ran the scene. I think it was 2 or 3 times. And then they quickly fell back and shot one wide, which you can see that incredible sunset, which happens in New Mexico after these lightning strikes, where there's really electricity in the air. And I guess, you know, for all of the trickiness of that experience, and you always want time, there's something fantastic about both David Harbour and I, who played Akeley, but also every single member of the crew suddenly very attentive and very energetic towards one thing, and that's a really beautiful moment. So that's an enjoyable little piece that can happen.
That is a great story. Well, let's wrap it up here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for having me.
And good luck on season 2. Thanks.
Thanks very much. See ya.